Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. I recently added 300 Blackout to the list of cartridges that I hand load. Now, I know a lot of people already load this cartridge, so maybe the information in this video is old news, but I thought I would take a minute to talk about my approach to 300 Blackout just for the benefit of anyone who's interested. Of course, the first question when you start hand loading any cartridge is where to source your brass. In this case, I don't have a supply of empty 300 Blackout cases to start with, and I don't really want to shell out the money either to buy brass or to buy factory-loaded ammo from which I can save the brass, so I think my best bet is going to be forming the brass from empty 223 cases, of which I have a surplus. To do this, first I rough cut the cases to a length of 1 3/8 inches. This probably could be done with just a vise and a fine-toothed hacksaw if you were careful and only had a handful of cases to do. But I already had this jig to hold 223 cases on my mini lathe, so I'm rough cutting the cases with a cutoff bar on my lathe. Every once in a while I'll get a case that hangs up and gets ruined, but for the most part this method works okay, and I figure I'll use it on the first few hundred cases to get me started. If after that I decide I need 1,000 more, then I'd probably look into making a jig to hold 10 or 20 cases at a time on my milling machine and trim them with a diamond cutoff wheel. Anyway, once I've got the cases rough cut to length, I lube them up and run them through the sizing die and the neck expansion die. Most die sets only give you a single die to perform both these operations at once. But if you ever have a case get stuck in the sizing die and tear the rim off, you won't be able to remove the expander mandrel with the neck of the case still stuck in the die, and you won't be able to press the stuck case out without removing the expander mandrel, so you've got a bit of a problem. To mitigate this possibility, I just drill out a piece of 7/8 14 all thread to hold the expander mandrel, in essence making a separate expander die that allows me to size the case and expand the neck in two separate operations. That said, I don't think I've actually had a case get stuck in the sizing die since I switched to using sulfurized canola oil for case lube. I've got a separate video on sulfurizing canola oil if you're interested. Anyway, after sizing the cases to the proper dimension, I trim them to their finished length of 1.350 inches using a standard case trimmer. Well, my case trimmer may not be totally standard since I made it myself. I think I have a video about making it as well, but the design is pretty conventional and any commercial case trimmer would probably work for this operation. Then it's back to the loading press to decap, reprime, add powder, and seat the bullet. I suppose I don't really need the sizing and neck expansion dies in the press since I already sized the brass, but I figure sizing them again after trimming won't hurt them any and may help to blunt or remove any slight burr that remains on the case mouth. My preferred load is 19.4 grains of H110 powder behind a 110 grain bullet. Out of a 10.5 inch barrel, I'm getting about 2,175 feet per second, which translates into 1,155 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Obviously, that is a supersonic load. I know 300 Blackout is more or less designed to provide subsonic capabilities in the AR platform, but at this point, I don't run any suppressors and don't have much use for subsonic ammunition. Actually, I've been pretty impressed with the performance of the 300 Blackout using this load. I was afraid the 300 would end up being a little anemic, but this load packs the same kinetic energy as my preferred 44 Magnum load, which is anything but anemic. Furthermore, it develops the same amount of kinetic energy using 38% less powder, same type of powder, and since the bullet velocity to mass ratio is higher, it should be flatter shooting and accurate to longer ranges. Anyway, that's my take on hand-loading the 300 Blackout. And until next time, thanks for watching the Idahoan Show.